Un saluto amici di Radiofonica, questa sera ci troviamo in compagnia di John Sweeney, giornalista della BBC e scrittore e autore del libro Scientology, la Chiesa della Paura. So welcome John.
Welcome, thank you.
So let's start with the questions. No, not so many people know the Church of Scientology, and what is it exactly?
Well, there is a big argument about what the Church of Scientology is, Christian. It's rock star Hollywood A-list stars, Tom Cruise and John Travolta, say it's a force for good. People who've left the church say it's a sinister mind control brainwashing cult. And so you cannot square those two descriptions. Tom Cruise, Travolta says it's wonderful. The people who've left say this brainwashed me. And so it's very, very difficult to find any kind of common ground. I did a documentary about the church 10 years ago for the BBC. It's on YouTube. It's called Scientology and Me. And I found it a dangerous and frightening thing. And at the end, I lost my temper with them, and rather embarrassingly, I apologised then. I apologise now. I started screaming at them. So you can. Anyway, there are some things I think that are clearly wrong about this thing. If you go to a church, a Catholic church, Christian church, they'll tell you about baby Jesus. You go to a mosque, they'll tell you about the prophet. If you go to a synagogue, don't eat bacon sandwiches, marry a nice Jewish girl. I'm not a theologian. But essentially, and you can say there are many people who will be watching who will say, come on, all religions are bad or something like this. But essentially, all the big religions are open and honest about the core of their belief, the heart of their belief. Ex-members of the Church of Scientology say that it is a space alien sect, in English cult, that secretly, at the heart of it is a secret. They call it the Wall of Fire, Il Muro del Fuoco, if I'm right. And this means that 75 million years ago, a space alien Satan called Lord Zenu brought space aliens to Earth and massacred them with hydrogen bombs inside volcanoes. This is the secret. This secret could cost you $1 million or €1 million, maybe 30 years of your life to acquire. If I tell you this secret, I'm telling you this secret right now, you will die because the secret is too big for you. And this conversation is proof it's all bullshit, because I've been doing this for 10 years and my hair has fallen out and I drink too much, but I am very much alive. So, now the church deny this, and they say that I'm a bigot, psychotic, and a liar. Take your pick.
So, in this book, you criticize the Church of Scientology. Why?
Because they lie about what they believe in. They say it's not a space alien cult sect. People who've left it say, oh yes it is, there is this secret, it's a space opera. Remember, the man who founded it was a bad science fiction writer called L. Ron Hubbard. Then one day he founded this thing which in America they call a religion, in Britain they don't, in Italy I think it is still not classified as a religion. But also the other thing, I criticize Scientology because what it does to people. They have a policy called disconnection. In disconnection, if you want to leave the church, if you leave the church, they put pressure on your family, if they're still inside it, to cut you off, to disconnect from you. So I know people I know a man called Mike Rinder who was in the church, who pursued me, who spied on me in 2007 when we made our first documentary. He's now left. And his mother, his brother, his sister, and his children do not talk to him at all. This is disconnection. And any organization, church or whatever it is, that says it's a good thing to cut up families, I do not agree with. I think it's wrong.
You interviewed Putin and also Donald Trump. What do you talk about with these politicians?
Okay, well, neither. There are big questions for Trump and Putin. To be fair, neither of them are Scientologists. At least not yet. I met Trump in 2013. He was not running for president at that moment. I met him to talk about, he had an argument with, he had a golf course in Scotland, and the Scottish neighbours said that his people were rude and bullying and thuggish towards them, and they didn't like Trump. So I asked him about that, but I was also interested in his money. He had a business colleague called Felix Sater. Sater was born in Russia, the son of a Russian gangster, and Sater went to prison in America for stabbing a man in the face with the broken off stem of a margarita glass, a cocktail glass. It gave the man 110 stitches in the face and neck. This was a big, nasty crime. Then Sater was involved in a stock market scam on Wall Street, $40 million. They call it in the trade a pump and dump scam. You buy shares cheap, you push them up, then you sell them. And this was organized by the Gambino crime family and the Genovese crime family in New York. So Sater was a gangster. Then he started becoming an informer for the FBI, and they protected him. But nevertheless, he was only an informer because previously he'd been a gangster, he'd been in prison. In 2001, 2002, something like this, he starts befriending Trump. Maybe they deny it. Certainly from 2006, he took Ivanka and Donald Jr. to Moscow. And in 2007, there was a story in the New York Times about his past. I interviewed Trump about it, and I said, why didn't you say to Felix Sater, you're connected with the mafia, you're fired? And Trump gave an answer, and then he got up and left. Now this is interesting today because Sater's name has popped up again. Sater has he put forward a peace deal for the Ukraine, which was no kind of peace for the Ukrainians. It was nice for the Russians, but not the Ukrainians. And he put this up through General Flynn, who was then Trump's national security advisor before he had to resign. So there is a question. The question is about Trump's money, is that he didn't build in Moscow, but Russian money ended up helping him build something called Trump Soho. Sater was the go-between, Sater was the money, Sater was a gangster. The charge against Donald Trump is that he has allowed himself to get too close to dirty Russian money and dirty Russian gangsters, Russian-born gangsters in this case. And Trump didn't help himself by, instead of answering my question properly, he walked away. And the Twitter picture, my Twitter thing is John Sweeney Roar, R-O-A-R, because I lost my temper with Scientology. But the picture is of Trump holding out his hand and me going, no, I want to ask another question, which is why he bought his concrete from Fat Tony Salerno. Why did he share a lawyer with Fat Tony Salerno? Fat Tony Salerno was a gangster. Now, Putin, some say, is a gangster who is also a president. Maybe that's wrong. What I can tell you is I've written a thriller called Cold. It's not in Italian, but it is in English. And it it's dedicated to 3 Russians, all of whom are good people, all of whom I met, all of whom are critical of Putin, all of whom have been shot dead. Their names are Anna Politkovskaya, Natasha Estemirova, and Boris Nemtsov. Boris Nemtsov was very, very funny. The first 2 were great, brave women who went to Chechnya. They were all critical of Putin, all shot dead. This makes me ask questions about the force, the presence of Russian democracy, or the lack of it, under Putin. But specifically, it was 2014. The MH17 jet had been shot down in the Ukraine, and there was a lot of evidence that this had been shot down by a Russell missile launcher by mistake. They didn't mean to do it deliberately. They thought it was Ukrainian fighter jet or something like this. Accidents happen in war, but nevertheless, hundreds of people died. And Putin, now I wanted to ask Putin about it. I went to the crash site. Putin is difficult to interview. In Moscow, St. Petersburg, it's impossible. But I had a clever producer who worked out that if we interviewed him maybe in Siberia, we had a chance. So we found out that Putin was opening a mammoth museum in Yakutsk, which is 9 time zones east of London, further east than Berlin, a long way away. And I had a big beard then and a suit and tie, and Putin came up the steps. There were other dignitaries, but they were afraid. I think Putin thought I was a professor of mammothology in the Mammoth Museum. Why not? And I reached forward, shook his hands. It's on YouTube, put in Sweeney and Putin. And I say to Putin, what about the killings in the Ukraine? Not just the Russian and Ukrainians, but the Australians, the British, the Dutch, the Malaysian. I'm talking about the plane. Putin has no choice because the TV cameras are on. They think I'm talking about mammothology. And he has to answer the question. He says it's all the Ukrainians' fault, maybe, but nevertheless, this was a proud moment for me as a journalist. But at least I tried to ask Putin a question about this jet. Afterwards, the Kremlin PR people were very angry with us. They took us down to a room, and in the room there was coffee and croissant. Things have improved since Stalin's day. The door was locked, and a big man stood outside the door. So things are not so different. Eventually they let us go, and I made a panorama about the jet, about the war in Ukraine, and about my challenge to Vladimir Putin. So I've been rude to both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Ha 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 ha.
So, thank you for your time. Amici di Radiofonica, ci vediamo alla prossima, grazie di tutto.